Okay, looks like I'm live. So if there's any problem with my audio, if my moderator would contact me on Facebook Messenger, that would be very helpful. So, a little bit to talk about. Let's talk about the elections last night. And to say that what we saw, if you're conservative, evangelical, and had some hope with the election, it certainly was not a red wave or a red tsunami. It was, I don't even know if I would call it a red ripple at this point. So the big deals were: are we going to get some kind of control? Is the Republicans going to get control of the House and Senate? So yeah, I agree with the comments. It's not a red wave. It's at best a red ripple. So let me, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to share my screen here and make sure that a couple things are coming up. And so hopefully you can see some of these things. So let's talk about what happened. So the big thing that was hoped for by the Republicans was gaining control of the Senate, the U.S. Senate, and the House in the midterms, and then their governors and legislatures and all sorts of things. And those are topics that take days to drill down on. So let's look first at the just in sort of general on the governor races. Ohio, DeWine won. Now, DeWine is a bit of a rhino. There's things that he did that I did not like, but he won. I think he got 61% of the vote here in Ohio. I believe that every state office is now held by a Republican in Ohio, and unless there was a change on the legislature side, I'm not even sure how many of those were up for election this year. Certainly the House and some of the Senates. Well, I don't know if this is an Ohio Senate year or not. Anyway, the Ohio House and legislature probably has a veto-proof majority, so that anything that the state enacts, then it'll be passed. But even in Ohio, with Republicans controlling all of the major state offices, the Supreme Court, there was a election for Supreme Court Chief Justice. There was an appellate court judge that ran on the Democratic side, who I have had some experience with, who I was not positive about her at all. So the Republican won, Sharon Kennedy. So I think that that's great. All the other major offices, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, auditor, treasurer, on and on, those are all controlled by Republicans here in Ohio. But even here, with the Republicans controlling everything, we don't have certain pieces of legislation that I think conservatives would like on transgender mutilation surgeries for minors and that type of thing. Proposed legislation on that is sort of stuck in the legislature. It's stuck in committee, and it can't get out. And they could enact it tomorrow if they wanted to, and it would even if DeWine didn't like it and vetoed it, it would pass. But they don't do it. So I think what we're seeing going on here, and I'm bringing that up because I think this is a picture of a big, big cultural issue in the United States. So look, we can argue about whether the election has problems and whether votes are being counted or not counted and that type of thing. I'm just telling you is that my overarching view is that, listen, we have to know where our heart lies and who we're about. And we can work for these things. We live in the world and we can try to make things better. But I'm just saying that we live in a culture that has gone, for lack of a better term, the way of Moloch. When I was on the Fox News panel, and in the conversations around the panel before the panel, after the panel, and before the debate a week ago with J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan. And J.D. Vance, by the way, did win. I think he got close to 54% of the vote. So he had a big victory. He's not perfect. I'm not sure, looking at the list of candidates everywhere, I don't think there's anybody perfect running. And I think we need to understand that as Christians, we're never going to have a perfect candidate to vote for. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't vote. That's my personal opinion. And I'll have some more comments about that maybe tomorrow. I'm going to do a radio show with David Fiorazzo at Stand Up for the Truth on Q95 FM in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And you can go to Q95FM.com, Q95FM.com, and click on Listen Live. And that's at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central tomorrow. And we're going to talk about the elections. We're going to talk about Israel. We're going to talk about some of the things going on, a little bit of which I'll touch on here. But tomorrow will be a little bit better because we're going to be in kind of a environment where we have David and his co-host Mary Danielson, a new co-host. So we're going to have a chance to have a conversation about it. I kind of like that format. So, this was a major disappointment. So in a big victory, Ron DeSantis won big in Florida. They also elected Rubio as their senator, and they each won by 20 points or more. So those were big victories. They even won Miami-Dade County, which has never happened. So I don't know, though, if Florida translates to the whole country. It may be that Florida has a lot more conservatives now. People who are conservative are moving to Florida. New York lost a lot of people. I think they lost 50,000 people in Manhattan just a month or two ago. And maybe a lot of those were conservatives who were just tired of New York and they moved to Florida and other places. So that would skew the Florida election results, and it would also skew the polling in New York. So in New York, it looked like Lee Zeldin was going to do well vis-a-vis Kathy Hochul, the Democrat, but he got waxed pretty good. He didn't. It wasn't even really close. And it was very, very people. So in terms of the election, it was a major disappointment. So let's look at here's the map. This is the New York Times Senate map. And I think it needs to be updated. They stopped updating it at about 4 a.m. And I think you're going to find if it's going to trend towards Republican control of the Senate, you're probably not going to see any more updates at the New York Times. But they do a pretty good job of keeping the election results updated. So right now they say 48-47. I think I actually have a map or a graphic from the Associated Press. Yeah, that shows 48-48. So let's just go back to the map here. And so what you see on the map is there are a number of states. So Pennsylvania is sort of striped, but that went to Fetterman. And I think the honest assessment there is that Oz was a horrible candidate. In my view, Oz was a terrible candidate. Everybody thought that he could kind of drag it over the line. But he didn't. Also, what the Democrats did in Pennsylvania, they did a couple other places, like with Doug Mastriano, who, frankly, there were some people associated with his campaign who said some really anti-Semitic stuff. And so I think that hurt him with a lot of people. But what they did was the Democrats chose people who they thought they could amplify their association with Trump, and they dump millions into their primary campaigns. So the Republicans are running against each other to see who's going to be the candidate, and the Democrats dump millions of dollars into the campaign, particularly for Doug Mastriano. And Mastriano got beat pretty bad by I don't think a so great candidate on the Democratic side, Josh Shapiro. But he won. And then you had Fetterman and all the problems with Fetterman and his physical problems. But he's a crazy lunatic lefty. And he won. It appears that he won. So in the New York Times counting, that's part of the 48, Pennsylvania. So there are still 4 states. So Wisconsin, that's Ron Johnson, Republican, looks like he's going to win. I think you can probably put that in the Republican column. So that would make it 48-48. If you go to Nevada, Laxalt looks like he's going to win on the Republican side. So that would make it 49-48 Republican to Democrat in the Senate. And then you have Arizona. Well, you have Alaska. And Alaska looks like it's going to go Republican, but if it's Linda Murkowski, it's like, can we really call her a Republican anymore? But that would make it 50-48. And then you have Arizona. The results in Arizona are dripping in. And in the recent vote drops, as they drop votes in Arizona, and it's going to take a few days probably to get all the results in Arizona. It's amazing to me. Florida goes through, they have millions and millions of voters all over the state, a couple different time zones, if I recall correctly, because the Panhandle is on the central time zone. And within, I don't know, 2 hour and a half, 2 hours of the polls closing, they have all the complete results. It's like 99.9% are all counted and in, and they have mail-in voting. They have, absentee, all this, and they get it all done. And here we are with Arizona, and it's going to take them days. So, and when it takes that long, that also raises people's questions about, is everything being done quickly? So in Arizona, they're bringing votes in all the time. They had a lot of voting machine problems. They had lawsuits, litigation. They tried to get the polls to stay open later, and I think a judge turned that down. And the problems did seem to be mostly in Republican areas. So this is why I said the other day, you got to win beyond the margin of cheat. So in Arizona, the recent voter drops have been largely skewed towards Republican. So while Mark Kelly has a fairly sizable lead, when they drop the votes, it gets the Republican is getting about 70% of the vote count that comes in. And that would be typical of elections. It's going to be skewed toward Democrats in the early counting, towards Republicans in the late counting. On the governor's side, Carrie Lake, the last thing I saw was that she was within, this was from, I think, the Arizona Republic website, updated at 10:53, so about a half hour, about less than an hour ago. She had now closed the gap to 12,000. Last night it was like 130,000. Katie Hobbs was ahead. And so now 66% of the vote in, that gap has dropped to 12,000. So I think the next vote drop, you're going to see Carrie Lake surge ahead. And so I think she looks like she's going to win. And that's kind of a big deal election, given the way the governor things are going. So in the House, right now, the balance of power, the Republicans got to get to 218. Most people who are looking at it think the Republicans are going to get to about 220 to 223, which means it's going to be just a very razor thin majority. So the other election that needs to be decided is Georgia. In Georgia, the last I saw was that Warnock had about 49.5% of the vote. Herschel Walker had about 48.6% of the vote. And then there was a Libertarian candidate who had about 2% of the vote. Now, the reason that that's significant is because for anyone to win the Senate in Georgia, you have to get at least 50%, like 50.00001% of the vote. And right now, it does not look like Walker or Warnock are going to get 50%. And so that means on December 6th, there will be a runoff election, which means we're going to go through all of this again, all the voting and all the campaigning and everything. So, like I said, so right now, I think with Johnson, Republicans, Democrats are 48-48. Alaska would make it 49-48 Republicans. Then Nevada would make it 50-48. And so then you have what's going to happen in Arizona. Right now, Kelly's leading, but it's possible that Blake Masters could come on and win that particular election, which would make it 51-48 Republicans, and then Georgia won't really matter. But if Mark Kelly wins in Arizona, then it's 50-49, and Georgia becomes incredibly important then. But understand too, you got certain Republicans, Susan Collins, if Murkowski holds on and wins in Alaska, that are kind of wishy-washy Republicans. They're not solid conservatives or anything by any stretch of the imagination. The other thing that is going to happen too with the Senate and the House, even if the Republicans control it, they don't control the executive branch. So the Republicans will be able to do investigations and that sort of things in the House. I don't think McConnell will let any of that go on if he continues to be the majority leader in the Senate. So if there's going to be any investigations and that type of thing done at the House level, it's going to be done by the Republican-controlled U.S. House of Representatives. For example, Jim Jordan is my congressman. And I think this is indicative of the issue that I think is at the core of a lot of what happened. This is a strongly Republican area. Jordan won. He got about 69% of the vote, but a female, and I saw yard signs for her, and it was, I think her name's Tammy Wilson. And she said, women's rights, Tammy Wilson, women's rights. That's the only thing I ever saw from her. I never saw her campaign ad. I never saw anything. She got 31% of the vote in a conservative area. That's indicative of the thing. So when I was at the panel on Fox News last week and talking to people outside of the panel, the women were, not all the women, but a large number of the women were concerned about the issue of abortion. And they were just telling flat out lies about abortion and what was going to go on. And so this is indicative of a culture that's sort of gone the way of Moloch, in my view. This abortion thing, we had Roe rammed down our throats for 50 years. It was taught, it became part of the culture. I don't see that gets changed overnight. This is indicative of what I view as an end time culture, that this would be such a big deal issue for all the women. In fact, some of the analysts are looking at the women vote. If you back the women vote out that voted pro-abortion, that is a Republican. It would have been a red wave or a red tsunami, but the abortion issue was much, much more important than any of us would have liked it. We got the Dobbs decision, but it didn't change anything. It just returned it to the states. So in Kentucky, they enacted what I would call pro-abortion proposition, amendment, whatever it was, to their constitution. Michigan, a very pro-abortion, they call it pro-reproductive rights amendment to the Constitution, was voted in. And Gretchen Whitmer, probably the most pro-lockdown of the governors in the United States, she won against a pretty good conservative. So what we have is we have a huge cultural issue. So the question becomes, what do we make of this? And so I sort of view this with a lot of these things that happen. We get optimistic. I was optimistic, I'll admit. But all of these things seem to be sort of designed to decouple us who are, true evangelicals. I use the term conservative evangelicals because there are people who claim to be evangelicals who are woke and that type of thing. That's why I use that term. And so when I say conservative, I don't mean necessarily conservative politically. I mean conservative theologically, Bible-based evangelicals. But it's sort of like God's decoupling us from the world, which I think is what is going to happen in the end times. So let's see. So tomorrow, David and Fiorazzo and Mary Danielson and I are going to talk about this on Stand Up for the Truth. I am wrestling with playing something. Came across NPR, National Public Radio, did a program called sort of like a day in the life of an abortion clinic. And one of the things in that, they talked to people who were coming to the abortion clinic, but they did a segment where they recorded the audio of what goes on at an aspiration abortion, where they suck the baby out in pieces. And I have to tell you, it's one of the most disturbing videos I have ever heard. You can hear the sound of the suction machine and the doctor and people there. And then you can hear the lady moaning as she's going through some pain in the abortion. And then the doctor goes, "Oh, you did so good." I mean, it sounds like there was a birth. It sounds like the audio that you would hear at a birth, but you know that a baby's been ripped apart in this. And so I'm wrestling whether we play that tomorrow and Stand Up for the Truth, or I play that Sunday. But the interesting thing is, when we were at the panel at Fox News, when you would talk to people, they were just telling outright lies about what abortion restrictions do and what they will do. But because they're blinded, they're totally blinded to this, and it's indicative of a spiritual condition. But I can tell you that with most of these people, and I've talked to people recently who said, I have children, they used to be pro-life, now they're pro-abortion. They went to college and everything, and they got around their friends and they became pro-abortion. And it's true. You can play that audio of an aspiration abortion and how awful it is. And and the people will say that's not what happens. You can show them graphics of how a partial birth abortion happens. You can show them graphics of what an aspiration abortion, where they take the baby and they try to assemble the part, make sure they got all the parts out of the woman's uterus. So they sort of assemble. You can show them those graphics and they say, no, that's not what happens. That doesn't happen that way. And so you have people that are totally, completely blinded. So I wrestle with playing it. If you want to listen to it, go to NPR. I'm just telling you, you can play it for pro-abortion people and they'll deny that it's true, even though it comes from NPR. I mean, you can go and find graphics on pro-abortion websites about partial birth abortion, and people will say that's not what happens. That doesn't happen. You're lying. You're making it up. And so we have this this picture of things in the end times where people are so blinded by what they see. So, so maybe what I'll do is I don't know. It's difficult to know what to do, but people I don't think would believe it. So that's what I'm wrestling about. So pray for me about that as I decide what to do on that. I know people won't, and I'll tell people in advance that that's what's going to happen. And I think I have a. No, I don't. I have to go back here. I didn't copy it. That's I know what I put it under another tab. So this was the ballot proposal that was in Michigan, reproductive freedom for all. And it passed in Michigan. Now, I don't know that something like this would pass in Ohio, but I'm just telling you is that the women I encountered over the past week at sort of at this political event, this abortion thing was like the front thing in their mind. They didn't care about the economy. They didn't care about any other cultural issues. It was abortion, abortion, abortion. And what they completely on lies that they've been fed by the media. So, anyway, so I'm wrestling with it. And so I'm not sure exactly the best way to do this. But anyway, so let me look at some questions. So I'm going to talk Sunday. I'll talk a little bit about some of the other things that are going on. There's this COP27, United Nations Climate Change. This is a picture of some of the private airlines flying into Sharm el-Sheikh for the conference. The people who are going to tell us we shouldn't do this. There's also the Sinai Climate Partnership Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development that they're launching during this. They're going to have this thing up at Mount Sinai. See, I don't know. I think I had. I mean, they have this Jerusalem call for climate change, whatever. They have this green agenda. They have a thing called the Echo Bible that they're putting out. It's written by a couple of lefty reform rabbis, a new environmental reading of the Hebrew Bible and Genesis and Exodus. And what you find is that this is all part of the green agenda. So when in the United States, I was running across a manifesto for Europe organization about, and what did they call it? They called it the New Green Deal. Now, that's what the lefties in U.S. Congress, the Squad, has been pushing. And by the way, the members of the Squad, they won with like 70% of the vote in their districts. Even in Minnesota, where they've had all these problems and riots and everything in 2020, they elected the left-wing Democratic governor up there. So the one thing you can take away from this is we have a big problem. The problem we have is spiritual, and we are a very, very divided country. That's pretty clear. I will also talk about, this is kind of, I've been talking about this proposal that some people have put forward. The Saudis called it the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine. Some others have written, pro-Jewish, pro-Israel people have written, but they call it the Jordan option. And they take the Trump plan, they add Jordan to it, Israel security control over everything west of the Jordan River, but the Palestinian enclaves and that type of thing. And so here are some pictures of how these Palestinian islands look in this thing. You can see how they're kind of broken up with roads connecting them. So this is, and Netanyahu has come in. He did an interview about 11 days before the election where he said what he wanted to do was achieve peace with Saudi Arabia. And so the people that are pushing this Jordan option and Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine, they're also pushing the Abraham Accords and peace with Saudi Arabia and that type of thing. And Netanyahu has sort of come out and said he would accept this if Israel had complete security control and the IDF could go anywhere in those areas that would be part of this Jordan option or Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine, where Jordan would really be in control of everything. So, and that would sort of be what everybody voted for and approved back in 1922, although Israel would get effectively less land. I don't know if this is the way that it's going. The other thing I was thinking about is how is it that when Israel gets this temple, it appears to be a temple sacrificial system started again. I'm not saying that this is going to save them or anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it appears to be part of a lot of the prophecies at the end times. Why is it that the Antichrist comes in and stops it? What's up with that? Well, look at what's going on in Egypt with this climate partnership. And when you look at this Sinai Climate Partnership and what they've said in this, where do I have this here? Sorry for the flashing. This Echo Bible is like, eat more veggies. So if this religion starts a religion where they're sacrificing animals, and this Echo Bible things talks about, the concern for all humanity and animals, like they're all exactly the same. And that's not a biblical concept. If there was starting sacrifice, they did start sacrifices in Jerusalem. How do you think the world would react to that? Maybe this is one of the triggers. I mean, we have this whole green religion thing that's being set up to oppose this. That's just the thought I had the other day. So let me check with my moderator. I don't know if she has. I know she's kind of working alone. So I'll try to look back here. Let's see. So I've seen we're getting some bots and I apologize, sometimes in the live chat, you get these bots that appear. Sometimes they're like adult dating sites and that type of thing. And we have no control over that. So we try to set our things to prevent that. But when you say certain words, they just like swarm into the to the chat. So let me look at a couple things here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll put up a link to it on the NPR thing, so you can use it if you want. But you can go to NPR, just look in for a day in the life of an abortion clinic, and you'll find the audio there. It's pretty chilling, and Fox News had a big article about it, about how awful it was and that type of thing. So, anyway, question here, quick question. Euphrates River is drying up, and what do you think of the reports of strange moaning and groaning coming from there? Angels bound up. I've not seen reports of groaning and moaning there. I do know that the Euphrates is drying up, part of that because of Turkey's damming up of Euphrates and Tigris rivers in Turkey. You need to watch the rise of Turkey. Turkey has now, they want to be a gas hub, and they're cooperating with Russia and that type of thing. There's a strengthening alliance. I just saw something this morning. I can't remember exactly what it was, but Turkey is very significant. So anyway, here's Tammy. Is digital money in the near future? Yeah. Central bank digital currencies are being pushed. Turkey has a program that they're putting in place. Japan, United States is studying it. I don't know that's going to be rolled out in early September, like some people think, but I think it's inevitable that it's coming. Let's see. Well, I don't want to stay here forever. It's a beautiful day, so I'm going to go to the driving range or golf course. It's gorgeous here in Ohio, although it's kind of interesting. This shows how things change. So we're in the fall harvest time. I was talking to a farmer friend. He's 40% harvested, but it is incredibly dry. So the last 2 days, it's windy and dry and very low humidity. And there is a high danger fire alert that's been issued for Southern Ohio because of that. So, just pray that nothing happens, because these crops are so dry in the fields right now as they're getting ready to harvest and doing the harvesting, that if they caught on fire, it would be like California. So that's a question. So I'll answer. Well, let me look at this one here. This is one that comes up all the time. Do I think that the United States is end time Babylon? I think if you look at the description in Jeremiah 50 and 51, you could make the argument, you could make the case that America seems to fit that. But there's some other things that I'm not sure. Some of it the United States fits. I'm not sure that we fit all of it. So when I look at what this end time Babylon is going to look like or be, I think that I look at all the different options that people have proposed, and so I'm sort of paying attention to all of them. So yeah, I pay attention to America. Is America Babylon? I don't really know. I don't think so. But people have made fairly compelling cases for it. So I think it's something that we need to watch and be aware of. But I'm not going to come on here and say that it is. Tammy, you said everything's centered around abortion now. I just think abortion is sort of a central issue. I think that if you could have backed the abortion thing out of this election, it would have been a very, very different election. If it looked like Republicans weren't going to do anything with regard to abortion, the Republicans, it might have been a red wave or a red tsunami. But then that doesn't get what a lot of Republicans really want, is something done about this evil scourge of abortion. So anyway, so let me hide this. So anyway, look, I'm going to terminate this. So if you want to listen to me live tomorrow, David Fiorazzo, Stand Up for the Truth, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Q95fm.com. Click on Listen Live, Q95fm.com, Listen Live. I'll post it on my Twitter and Facebook and Telegram channels. And if I remember, I'll do Getter and True Social. It gets a little hard to manage all of these different social things. So anyway, let me just check the comments real quick and see. So the question is, when do we rise up with civil disobedience? I know everybody's upset. I think that my own view on civil disobedience is that if it's a restriction that prevents you from sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, that's when you disobey. Short of that, I think that it's a personal conscience issue. I'm just not sure how effective it will be. And understand these questions about elections and that type of thing, these are happening all over the world. And I can't talk about some countries on YouTube because they just say, if you do, we're going to take down your channel. And we just don't want that to happen. But you can look. It's not hard to find that out. So I just, again, I think if you're going to resist when they don't let you share the gospel. Otherwise, we're going to live in, at times we're going to live in oppressive cultures. We live in a culture where we can vote and do these things, and sometimes it makes a difference and sometimes it doesn't. And we can see it this election. I mean, Ohio went a certain way. Florida clearly went big time a certain way, but I don't think Florida was indicative of the whole country. So anyway, appreciate you listening. Again, tomorrow, Stand Up for the Truth at 10 a.m. Eastern and talk to you then. Thanks. Bye.